New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hello again, dear ones. Reverend Robert with you over here.
Rev Z right here.
And this is New Thought Today here on the New Thought Media Network. It always happens every Tuesday, 2 p.m. Mountain Time. So grateful that you are with us. So good to see you. And I'm trying to remember, Z, did we do a show last week or did we show a rebroadcast last week?
I think we did a broadcast last week.
We did a rebroadcast. That's right. Yeah, that's right, because we were celebrating a colleague who made their transition earlier or late last year, and so there was confusion as to who was in town or not, and that's happening a lot this coming month or so. One or the other of us is out of town. It seems like almost every week this month.
Yeah, who's on first? I don't know who's on second. I mean, we're gonna play that game for a little while.
There is one, yes. So, folks, if this is your first time joining us, please feel free to chat along in the comments, chat along, let us know you're out there, join the conversation. This is the program where Z and I get a chance to take a look at where this movement of New Thought is sort of heading. And oftentimes we do that with some really great interviews. We've got a great interview for you next week. That is going to be Reverend Dr. Dale Worley out of Unity of Savannah. He's going to be with us next week. However, this week, we're kind of kicking the football around a little bit, if you will. 5 different snow games this weekend, but that's another story. And yes, the Bills beat the Steelers yesterday afternoon as well. So I think the snow went in their favor. But anyway, I'm getting us off track here, folks. We're still supposed to be talking about the New Thought philosophy. And this was Martin Luther King weekend. So we felt it also very appropriate to speak a little bit about Martin Luther King Jr. and not just the work that he did, but is the legacy of King, did King's work, does it continue to hold weight? Does it continue to create a vibration? Does it continue to move people forward as an inspiration to create some lasting change, some true social change, if you will?
Yeah, and I think, I think now more than ever, that whole idea of a dream has to be re-examined and maybe re-articulated, right? I think Dr. King made it very clear and made some very pungent points, but I think given that was 60 years ago now, I think it is, at least.
Right. Yep.
The environment has changed, right? So it's you mentioned football. So it's like football. The playing field still the same, but some of the rules of the games have changed of what you can and cannot do and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And using that same metaphor, I think we have to begin to re-articulate what it means to be of service, which was one of the big things I think Dr. King spoke of, and I would put a slash behind service and put activists, and not in necessarily the way of being a marcher or a protester, but an activist in terms of being involved and being active in the community and in this whole idea of building a world that works for all.
Yeah. You got me inspired real quick. I threw in I pulled up my Chat GPT.
All right.
And to rewrite Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech in current language from a New Thought perspective.
Ooh, what did that say?
And it's only 5 paragraphs. But it also includes a disclaimer at the beginning and at the end that says this is a creative representation. Do not attribute these words to Dr. King. So here, I envision a world where individuals, regardless of their background, stand together in the harmonious symphony of existence. I dream of a day when people are judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. In this New Thought perspective, let us affirm the power of our collective consciousness to transform society. Let our thoughts and intentions pave the way for a reality where love triumphs over fear and understanding overcomes division. Just as every thought carries creative energy, let us consciously choose thoughts of unity, compassion, and shared prosperity. Together, we can manifest a world where the richness of diversity is celebrated and every person is recognized as a unique expression of the divine. I have a dream that one day the energy of love and the understanding will flow through the veins of our communities, eradicating the disease of hatred and prejudice. Let us declare our commitment to co-creating a reality where justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. May our collective consciousness become a force for positive change, breaking the chains of inequity and lifting humanity to new heights of spiritual awareness. Together, let us affirm, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
That's pretty good.
Please note this is a creative reinterpretation and not a replacement for the powerful and historic words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah, I can appreciate both of them in the context of where we are last night, especially given the I'll stick my toe in here and bring it out real quick in terms of the Iowa caucus last night. And you know, because what that says to me is when Dr. King first had that dream and delivered that speech, there was a physical, visceral presence that needed to be dealt with, right? Yep. Not to say that that's not needed now, but it's a little more civil, if you will, than it was back then when they were setting dogs on people and putting water hose on people and bombing churches with little girls in them and setting buses on fire and those types of things. Those things still happen now, but there's, I think the genesis of them are same energy, a little different expression, if you will. Yes. But this idea of consciousness, right? Idea of our thought patterns having energy and the way we perceive things affecting the environment that we're in has to now be married with that visceral part, I believe, and it has to go hand in hand.
Yes, absolutely. It to me, it feels like the inobvious. Well, the answer to my original question is I do believe King's words continue to propel and reverberate and create newly in our world. And I think we're getting to see that. It is tricky because we do still see the prejudice and the oppression, and the difference now is it's bullets and pepper spray rather than dogs and water hoses. And so I believe we've made progress in this regard. I think we're still a long way away from a beloved community, though, from a true, authentic expression of King's vision of the beloved community.
I would agree, and I think, you know, when you look back at at some of the protests or march or demonstrations that he was involved in, you know, rights of the rights to feed the hungry, the rights for education, the rights for equal pay for equal work. All of these things are still present today. We're still having those same conversations and those same protests, police brutality. The same things are here. So we still have the same playing field.
Yes.
But the rules of the game have changed now, right? And so we have to become more educated, for lack of a better word, of these new rules of the game, so we begin to play at a high level.
Yeah.
And so that, to me, that means we have to, as Dr. King said, we have to get involved, right? Whether it's wherever you as an individual feel comfortable, whether that means writing an article, whether that means going to your local food bank and serving dinner, whether that means running for office, whether that means going to the school board and articulating, an idea that you and you alone have an interesting perspective on because of where you are in your life. But we have to begin the time to sit on the sidelines and not be involved. I think those days should be rolling out of here, because if you don't, you're still going to be affected by the decision. So you might as well stake your claim, because you don't know what kind of energy you're going to resonate with that.
Yeah. Well, and I spoke about this on Sunday at Center for Spiritual Living Denver. Thank you for the invitation to speak and to be there. Folks, we encourage you head on over onto our website and in our YouTube page and check out what I had to say at the Center for Spiritual Living Denver on this past Sunday, because part of that is that, and especially for those of us with white privilege, to remain silent is complicit in the violence. Mm-hmm. There's no question about it. So we have to find that peace within ourselves that is where we want to play. I bet it. We've heard this question recently and heard a speculation that if King were still alive today, his work would most likely be in the industrial prison complex, the prison, the school to pipeline, prison pipeline that it's out there, and I like to think to myself, I don't know that would be true, because I have to believe that if King was still with us, we wouldn't have gotten to that place. Mm-hmm. That what we face today, not only have the rules changed, but the equipment has changed.
Right.
And so again, just as I was saying, it's not guns and water hoses, it's pepper spray and rubber bullets now. Mm-hmm. And the equipment has changed. So those that want to create a beloved community, those that want to experience that beloved community, we're left recognizing we've got to change our technologies as well.
Yes, because, people like to pigeonhole Dr. King, I think, in a lot of ways. But Dr. King evolved from where he was in the early mid-50s when he first became the leader of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and to where he was in terms of when he was assassinated. I mean, he went through, the Vietnam War peace on poverty, peace on financial. I mean, he touched every aspect of human life, because his mission, part of it, if not all of it, was how do we get human equality? If all men are created equal, how do we create that environment where that actually takes place? And so to kind of pigeonhole him into one kind of thing, that wasn't who he was. He was a very multifaceted individual, and I think he would be attacking this on all fronts, if you will.
On a number, yes. How many times was he arrested? I think I heard 29.
It's a ton. It's a ton.
And when I think of that, I think to myself, every one of those must have been the practice of nonviolence to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't say definitively that every time he said, "Oh, okay," and put his hands behind his back and went, there got to be occasions where the man put his foot down and said, "No, you ain't and got hit with a resisting charge because he was trying to say, no, you can't be doing this." So, right, there's, I think, both to the extent that we have to see both sides, we also have to recognize, and I think this is a part that's getting forgotten, is we have to recognize the trauma that is created in the original experiences and still being carried forward across generations to today.
Yes. I saw an interesting news piece, if you will, on American Expressions on PBS yesterday. I know it aired in the last week or so, and they highlighted two things in terms of it was on reparations. The program was on reparations.
Okay.
And it spoke to the fact of the whole incident that some of you may have heard about with Georgetown University and the Jesuits, and how they sold some couple of, I guess, close to 1,000 slaves to pay off a debt. And then there's now this whole process of trying to remunerate some land and create this fund for the descendants to go to school, whatever. And then there was another case where a couple of families that lived in, one of them was in California, but they were somewhere in Georgia. They found out about their forefathers' participation in this, and they've created foundations. And I bring that up to say that for us to truly get into this idea of humanity, you know, people say, well, I don't have anything to do with it. But one thing Dr. King, I think, tried to show is that, and he had something about a race, I forget the thing, but if I'm giving the person I'm running a race against a 25, 30-yard head start and a 100-yard dash, I'm not going to catch him.
No matter
I mean, it's just, I just not, unless that person stops, right? And so this whole idea of continually putting these ideas forward of how do we get an educational foundation that's solid? How do we get a financial foundation that's solid? How do we get a civil, a citizen's position where I can feel comfortable of expressing my ideas or bringing ideas to the government to literally be heard, right? Not just some figurative be heard, but to literally be heard and looked at. We have lots of work to do there, and to do that, we all have to be involved.
You know, I think you're yes, I want to agree. We all have to be involved. To sit it out is complicit in the violence and the oppression at this point. There's no question about it. And it comes to me that what you were just saying, there is such a sense of a huge division when it comes to trusting specifically the United States government. However, this seems to be growing into more and more of a global consciousness that can't trust the government. And if you and if any one thing gets tied to the government, appears to be a government project or program, it immediately becomes suspect. And I don't say this, but this is a very prevailing thought that I hear out in the world, and I see it in a lot of places. The government, no matter what, it is not to be trusted. And it really is it seems a fight between people and the government.
Right. Well, and you know, speaking of that, I watched a little bit of the after coverage from the caucus last night, And this morning they had some interviews with some citizens. You know, what does it basically like? What does it mean to be American, and and everything around that? And one of the prevailing points that came with a lot of the young people that spoke to the issue is that they don't feel any connection.
Not
right?
Being listened to, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they're not being recognized for who they are, what they are. And the old political rhetoric that goes back and forth with the generations before them no longer applies to them in the sense of how it's articulated and how we make I don't want to say this word. I got to find another. And how we work together to create a world that works for all has to be paramount, right? But now it's not. It's still drawing lines and pushing people apart. And as that new articulation from King, there's no respect for diversity. There's no understanding of what wholeness means in light of diversity or no diversity.
So go ahead. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you think about some of the communities in the South during the turbulent times, they were very separate and very segregated, but they created some very incestuous, I can't say that word, behaviors and ways of looking at the world that are still haunting us today.
Yes.
On both sides of the fence.
Yep. Yeah. And I have to believe that New Thought as a philosophy, as a faith, as a way of life is uniquely positioned to help alleviate some of this, to help heal some of this, to help people gain a different perspective. Because as you were sharing, I remember a phrase that came up from when I was young, and it was something to a point of, if you're not a Democrat in your 20s, you don't have a heart. But if you're not a Republican by your 40s, you don't have a brain.
And I get it.
And I think that is in so many ways an antiquated perspective of our evolution as human beings. And New Thought is here to help break down those old, deeply ingrained, erroneous thoughts.
Yeah. Because quite frankly, whether I'm 20 or 120, I still need to be concerned about the people, my environment, the way I live, and I need to be concerned about my well-being, my economics, my resources, and that's often where that line gets drawn, right? The Republicans are more concerned with resources and monies and things, and the Democrats are more concerned with rights and taking care of people or whatever. But you need both, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, a heart without a brain or a brain without a heart just don't work that well. It just doesn't. And so when we begin to look at part of the dream that Dr. King had, and as we look at now in the New Thought movement, because this is going to be, as the world continue to move in a way it is, and just in case for some of those who may not be as plugged into the news, Iraq and Iran, they start shooting some bombs back and forth between them today. And so now that's a whole nother thing, right? But if we don't begin to find our place in this, we the ostrich approach is not viable anymore.
Right.
Never was, but definitely not now.
Exactly. What I've always appreciated about New Thought as a philosophy, and from my understanding of it, my teaching of it, my education, my experience of it all, is there is a willingness to accept oneness as the default operation, as the default operating system.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I can't see how a whole bit more of that doesn't support all of us moving forward.
Right.
And
right.
We're having this conversation sitting here in Colorado, and our dear brother Wayne is listening to this in Canada and sharing a perspective that the United Conservative Party needs to kick out the Liberal government in Canada right now. Now, truthfully, I don't spend enough time paying attention to the nuances of that, of the Canadian political system. However, it's the exact same concept. It's the exact same conversation. If we strip away the labels, if we strip away the history, we come back to the conversation of what's going to take the country forward, and I trust towards a greater expression of oneness.
And you know, the ironic part of this to me is that the appearance of oneness, not just the appearance, the actuality of oneness has been so solidified in this world of high-tech, global economy, global weather. All these things point to that, you know, there is a oneness here that affects everything. Like, you know, people last week were talking about the weather over here on the West Coast. Well, that weather's over on the East Coast right now. It's, you know, down in Dallas, it was down to 13 degrees down in Dallas. And now that snow is over on New York. And depending on how the wind blows, it's going to go over to Europe, right?
Yep.
And so here's a thing that's affecting everybody. And because we didn't, you know about it, or didn't see it, or paying attention to it, you know, 5 days ago, that didn't stop it from coming across this country and doing its thing. It's the same thing in every aspect of our life.
Yep. Yeah, I'm constantly floored at the people that want to shout anti-Chinese rhetoric, but then are posting on Facebook how they just bought some gadget on Temu.
Right.
Right. And it's like, we have to be willing to accept the oneness no matter how it shows up. And sometimes that shows up as trauma. And sometimes that shows up as abuse. And sometimes that shows up as aggression. And sometimes that shows up as bullying and all those things. And we get to live in the world where we have to see both of them. We have to recognize both aspects as part of the wholeness. Yes. And that's not an easy thing for most people.
Well, but I would submit it should be. There is an external body and an internal body. There are things that happen to me on the inside that will affect my external. I can do things to my skin or to my external body that will affect the internal parts of my body. Known fact, right? And that understanding, that application works on every system in the universe. We have ample enough evidence to prove that. Why we choose to ignore it for some things and not for other things, and I think ignore it for the most important thing, us in our lives, is mind-boggling to me. To think that I can do something and it has no effect to me is ludicrous. Now, if somebody may have done something and it didn't happen to them directly, but it may have happened to some of their belongings or some of their people or whatever. And especially when we look at the law that we deal with, we know that there's no isolated incidents in the universe.
Yes. It is one. It is all tied together, and it is time for us to take a quick break. Say hello to a couple of our sponsors. Let them say hello to you as well. However, we've got more to come, and I love where this conversation is going. So I'm looking forward to coming in just a couple moments. Stay with us, folks. Hit the like button, share button, subscribe button. Let your friends and family know what we're up to here on the New Thought Media Network. We'll be right back after this. And we're back with more of New Thought today here on the New Thought Media Network. My co-host, Reverend Alzia, and I are so grateful that you're with us. Thanks for being a part of what we're doing here today. So, all right, Z, we started with Dr. King, and we've kind of definitely blazed a circuitous route around the topic so far. I'm going to throw at you the question we normally throw at our guests. What do you see as the future of New Thought? If we look at the legacy of King, what New Thought, and New Thought is always tied its harness. We've always tied right onto the horse that is Dr. We've always just been like, yeah, with whatever. So I'm not saying that properly. I think you catch my drift. So
yeah.
Where is this all taking us? Where do you see it going?
I often think about the 60s and now, and try to, because I feel that the energetic field to me is very much the same. In the 60s, the young people were against the establishment, right? For many different things, for the war, for poverty, for opportunity, pretty much the whole kit and caboodle, right? And we are there now, I believe, in that same vibrational field where there's a changing of the guard, right? And the young people, the up and coming leaders, are not in agreement, not in alignment with the way things are and the way things are headed. And so in that period, there was a lot of protests, whether they were physical protests or protests by the way I behaved, by the way I dressed. We see that some of that now. Okay. And so I think when I look at these parallels of an energetic vibration, I think what it says to me is that we're on the cusp of a new horizon, right? And when you look at some of the things that took place in the 60s that were thought of as kind of ludicrous or something like that, right now they are mainstays in the society. One in particular is food co-ops, right? And the whole idea of organics. Now, the food co-ops of yesterday are now the Sprouts and the Whole Foods and the Vitamin Cottages. That's what the food co-ops have turned into. They've turned into more of a commercial entity, but the idea of providing wholesome food, back in the day, the co-ops where you came and worked and you got a discount on the food because you helped box and deliver food or unload the trucks, those things. A communal effort. Everybody put some skin in the game, and you didn't have to. You just paid a marked up price if you didn't get a membership and help work, right? So that kind of an idea. Then there were land co-ops, right, where people got together, bought land, and built a community. Those ideas are coming back now. Some of them got tainted previously with the ideas of cults, and we'll leave that where it is. But those types of ideas of doing things more communal again are popping up. You know, why do all of us need to have a car when we only drive the thing once a week? Why don't we get a communal car or two, and we share that, right? And so these kinds of cooperative sharing ideas, and I think in terms of the direct question, in terms of New Thought, what we have a vehicle and an ideology and a philosophy, and if we implement it, a true way of life that allows this to happen with ease and grace, because we understand the connectedness. You know, why do both of us have to go buy, you know, $30,000 cars? Right now we $60,000. We can buy one $30,000 car and maybe put another $30,000 into buying some land to grow some food, or buying some land to build a building, or something to that effect, right? And we have the way to articulate what that means, the connectedness of it, the wholeness of it. And I'm hoping and trusting that we begin to push that idea of shared resources, shared knowledge, and shared understanding to a broader community than just preaching to the choir.
Amen. 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 Because what I hear, and as I'm kind of reflecting as you're sharing, one of my complaints over the years is that too many of the spiritual communities and the spiritual centers in this movement became silos and insulated and became rugged individuals and tried to do it all for themselves to maintain the largest metrics of success, the largest number of people in the room, the largest number of donations, and I get that most of that is driven by modern capitalism, because a bank's more likely to give you a loan if you can say you've got 100 people donating every week, and all the different pressures that were put upon spiritual communities to be a success. But I think that we were set up to try to be a success in a world that isn't ours that isn't necessarily where we should be playing.
Yeah. Well, and a key thing there is, you know, you mentioned football earlier, and you know, I watched a few of the games, and one thing about a football team, it is one unit that's composed of several parts, right? There's the offense and the defense, and there's special teams, right? And then on those different parts, there are different specialities, whether you're on the line, on offensive, defense, or whatever, right? But you could easily see, if you watch some of the games, parts of those teams were not functioning as a whole within themselves first, and definitely didn't help the overall team, right? But there's an understanding that we have to have the offense, the defense, and the special teams working in harmony, and having a common vision for this thing to work, called winning, right?
You can't be the quarterback, the defensive tackle, the place holder, the place kicking holder, and the punter all at the same time.
No, can't do it.
Can't do it.
Can't do it. Because if you get hurt, let's say you might be a good punter as a quarterback. Well, if you get hurt punting the ball, now we don't have a quarterback. Quarterback is a little more important in the overall scheme of the game than the punter.
Yes.
So because we can get somebody to punt. Now they may punt horribly, But if we don't have somebody to throw the ball and coordinate and organize the team, that's a bigger challenge to overcome than not being able to punt the ball well.
Exactly.
And so as centers and leaders of centers and community members within centers, we have to begin to be active. I'm going to go back to that. I mean, I think 2024 is a year of activity at all levels, individual, collectively, communal, global. We have to begin to work together to solve the challenges that are before us. And if we don't, there's always, there is no competition in God and spirit and consciousness, that however you want to frame the intelligence of the universe, there is no competition.
Correct. And if we come to you next year at this time and say, what did your community do? And you tell me that you went bowling and you had a couple of potlucks and you watched a few movies together and some of you took a camping trip to the lake together, we're going to have that conversation, right?
Yeah.
It's what activities are we committed to as spiritual, as followers of this movement, if that's what we say we are. I think I keep coming back to sit on the sidelines is complicit.
And those ideas that you gave right there, I think is really a base foundation that we need to rest upon to begin to build communities again. We have to be an environment. I mean, going to a Sunday service is great, right? But there's a level of tension that takes place in a Sunday service because you're getting information that may punch a couple of buttons and put you on alert about some things, right?
Right.
Whereas if we go bowling, I'm gonna let my guard down. We're gonna have some fun. We're gonna make some nice connections. If we go camping, if we go fishing, if we go as a unit to feed the homeless or collect clothes or whatever it might be, the connectivity at the energetic level is going to change. And I'm going to get to know you more personally, and you're going to get to know me more personally, which understands better how we do the dance.
Yeah. So, all right, you can call me on that. It's got to be the both and. We got to go bowling.
Got to go bowling.
But in that, we're gonna raise some money to give away some shoes. Exactly. Or in that, we're gonna find a way to buy a few extra meals and gift those out throughout the evening following the bowling or whatever it might be, to find that way and not from that point of, oh, look at us. It is that place of just, we got to help our neighbors. We get the people around us, whether they can contribute to our community directly or not is not the question. The question is, how do we support those forms of God that show up in front of us?
Mm-hmm.
That's the big reminder, is whatever it is that's going on in front of me, that is the expression of God in form.
Yeah.
And if I'm not willing to pay attention and to listen to the needs and respond to those needs, I don't know what my job is here then, if I'm not doing that.
Yeah. I mean, it's, there's the idea you can't be everything to everybody, and I agree. But I have to be aware of the connectivity of all things so that when I do whatever I do, I understand how it kind of fits in with the whole.
Yeah.
And so I don't send my energies in the opposite direction of where, we're being led in terms of a holistic approach to go, right? And see, again, one of the challenging things about life, period, especially spiritual life, and I guess you could say the same for any part of life, that is circular, because it is a evolutionary process. At some point, pretty much everybody that's talking about this stuff, unless they're stuck on one little thing, it's going to start circling back. Didn't you say that before? Yes, I did. I said it 3 times before you thought you even noticed that I said it, right?
Yep.
And the reason for that is because each time I go around this circle, this spiral, I hit point 0, I'm at a different vantage point. So there may be some things I said at point 0 that when I get to point 5, I got a better understanding. I have a more visceral interaction with it. So I can reaffirm those things that were clear. I can make amends, if you will, or I can state the obvious for those things that didn't work and begin to work to rectify those or to augment those as we move forward.
Yeah.
And that's this thing called life. It's not, we've gotten into this idea where we want it all to be done right now. We don't never have to touch it again. That's not life. That's called a museum or something. I don't know, but it ain't life.
Well, and truthfully, what would we do at that point? If everything were just rainbows and milk and honey and nothing ever. I've said this before. If we were all exactly the same, life would be a really, really boring place to hang. This would be a worthless experience.
Well, we've been taught that that's heaven, though, right?
Yeah, many. Yeah.
That's the interesting heaven. I don't know if it's
exactly. I don't know how I want to respond to that. So I got a better idea. Let's go say thank you to our organizational sponsors and individual donors, but we'll be right back with more. Don't go away, folks. You're tuned in to New Thought today on the New Thought Media Network, and we'll be right back. Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center, Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring. Oh, looks like I didn't do my job and cut the tail off of that video. Thank you, folks, for being a part of the New Thought Media Network. For everyone that's part of our committed giving program, we love and appreciate you. Please consider joining our committed giving program by heading at ntmedia.org/donate or hit the donate button on the website. Make your monthly donation, and we'll add you to the next version of our thank you video as well, which I promise will have a shorter tail by the next time you see it. So, all right, Z. So I think we've covered a lot of ground here today.
Yes.
Because, and you and I have talked about this so many times, and I want to talk about it in front of people so they know we're talking about it publicly as well. I really believe in part of the work that Sharif Abdullah is doing, and what he's speaking of is birthing a new society. And I really see that as an evolution of kings creating a beloved community. And it's going to take a lot of beloved communities, I believe, to create a new evolved society. And I really see New Thought as having an opportunity to be a part of this conversation and the dialogue and the activation of these principles to move not just, to move the philosophy forward. So the activity has got to be, I believe, paramount, informed by our spirituality, and motivated by our spirit, by our compassion, our faith, and the way of life the activity, the way of life of doing this. I think we're on the nexus of a grand new rising in all of this, in a new way of this all of being seen and active in the world.
Yeah, no doubt. It is definitely a grand rising in that you know, I think that verse from the Bible is more appropriate now than I've ever seen it, that says, those who have eyes, let them see. Those who have ears, let them hear, and begin to do the work of the Lord. Because and you can substitute Lord for anything that you feel comfortable with, audience, that gives you a reverence for the intelligence that has created this planet and this universe that we live in. But we have to, I believe, and I have to, maybe a strong word, because you can sit it out if you want, but there are consequences for sitting it out. But it behooves us to work together, to pull together in the same direction and work through whatever difficulties and challenges we face to make a world that works for all more prevalent than it is today.
Yeah. If you're going to, I think if you sit it out, yeah, you can do that. But my sense is you're going to be really lonely.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have a sense that people aren't going to sit it out. You've talked a couple of times about the Iowa caucus last night, and I heard a really unique perspective this morning that in Iowa, in the most conservative state in the United States, in the place that is the deepest, darkest, reddest state in the United States, amongst politically active Republicans, Donald Trump only got 50% of the vote.
Right. Well, and
they're claiming victory, but what it's pointing to is he's losing. He's losing his grip on the base. He's losing his grip on those people that are likely to vote Republican. He's not a landslide. He's got, and to me, that just points to the fact that nobody's going to sit it out. I think we're going to see higher voter turnout than ever before in the coming year. I think we're going to see massive change and massive conversation, people rising up saying we have to have these conversations now because we can't wait any longer to put food in people's bellies and put roofs over their heads.
Well, one thing that they also mentioned, and I don't know how much they're attributing it to the cold weather, but only 15% of the Republicans came out to vote or participate in the caucusing last
in this caucus. Exactly.
So he had 51% of the vote of 15% of the total that came out, right? So that means that there's a large number that still, you don't know what they think.
True.
I mean, 85%, you don't know what they think.
Yes. And I'm going with the story that he's not winning.
Yeah. Well, the next one will be the one in
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire is going to be an interesting one. New Hampshire, because the next two is New Hampshire and South Carolina, and people, we're not going into politics. What we're looking at is what will be the prevailing thought and idea that will shape our world, our lives for the next 6 years, let's say, because it's going to take this year going in, the 4 years of the presidency, and the year going out of the rhetoric, of the policies, of the presentation, of the marketing, and we have to, I believe, begin to counter that. We have to give some antidotes to those things that aren't quite true or that aren't quite holistically applied or looked at when we begin to work through issues, because there's always going to be issues.
Yes.
And there's always going to be disagreements. We have to come up with a better way of working through that.
Amen. And if you want to know what the disagreements are, Well, join us on Friday mornings, folks, 7 a.m. Mountain Time. Reverend Z and I do this very similar type of program where we talk more about the news and the politics of the day as well. I want to say thank you for being with us here today. You know, it's always, I love when we have guests and I love when we don't have guests.
Yeah.
I love when you and I just get to explore some of these ideas because to me, this is the divine. This is spirit revealing itself. This is how we come to explore a deeper understanding, not only of the philosophy, but the way the philosophy is out picturing into our lives and as our lives. And that's exactly what we've been doing here this afternoon. So thanks for joining us, folks. We'll be back next week. We do have a guest, a special interview with us next week. Reverend Dale Worley from Unity of Savannah is going to be with us. And I think that's going to be a really good time. I'm looking forward to it. Z, I hope you are as well.
Looking forward to it. Getting this new year started off hot.
Exactly. All right, folks, we're out of here for now. Until next time, we wish you peace and richest blessings. Bye now.